One day I thought, I just want to go to sleep and never wake up again. What's the purpose? Why not get it over with? Why not kill yourself and save yourself all the grief that people go through? And so I thought about suicide quite a bit, even as a youngster.
For over 40 years, Amazing Facts has been dedicated to sharing God's Word through media. This program features highlights from some of our best television broadcasts. We invite you to sit back and enjoy this edition of Amazing Facts Presents.
You know, there's always a risk when anybody stands up and spends too much time talking about themselves that they can squeeze God out of the picture, and I don't want to do that. My point in doing this is really redemptive. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I just like to share what I've found in my searching. First of all, let's establish a fact. Everybody wants to be happy, and that's perfectly normal. God wants you to be happy. When God first made the world, everything was good, good, very good. You read it there in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. That's his plan. But a lot of people think that happiness comes from riches and fame, or as we sometimes say, fame and fortune. Well, I want you to know that happiness does not come from fame and from fortune. I grew up in an unusual family with some very opposite parents. They had a pretty fiery relationship, lasted long enough for my brother and I to come along, but maybe I'll start with Dad. Dad was very poor growing up. His father died when he was just 7. He had 3 younger brothers during what they call the Great Depression. You ever heard of a book called Grapes of Wrath? About the people from Oklahoma that fled to California during a famine. My dad was part of this Dust Bowl migration, and he left home very young, got involved during World War. Well, he learned to fly before the war. So as the war began, he already entered in the aviation business, and he was a captain in the Air Force during World War II. He was flying on D-Day, and a very talented pilot. He not only was an instructor, but he could fly just about anything. After the war, he began to buy and sell airplanes, and he started a couple of different aircraft industries. Here's an article, George Batchelor, president of International Air Leases, most influential person of the year. It's 1995. This is from the business section of the Miami Herald. Still flying high. I'll see if I can read this for you. At 71, aviation pioneer George Batchelor isn't ready to descend. He runs one of Miami's most successful businesses, pilots a jet, races cars, water skis, and will soon take a bride age 29. That's when he was 71. And he wasn't done yet. You'd think with all that money that he'd be happy, but he wasn't happy. There's a lot of stress in his life. It seems like you never think it's enough. You're driven. You make money, and then you end up becoming a slave to your businesses and a slave to your money, and everybody's trying to take it, and it just becomes a very stressful life. Jesus said, a man's life does not consist in the abundance of things he possesses. What profit is it if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? Happiness does not come from earthly treasure. You won't keep it. You can't take it with you. You've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul. You can't take it with you. Now, my mother, on the other hand, like I said, very different. She's a beautiful woman. Jewish, born in New York, grew up in California. My mother was in show business, and she was a film critic for Good Morning America. She used to write songs for, the people that used to listen to Mom's songs are fewer and fewer every year, but some of you maybe remember Andy Williams or Frank Sinatra or Elvis Presley. Anyone remember Elvis Presley? She wrote songs for these different people. When she was a film critic in Hollywood, she was very powerful. She was actually the president of the Film Critics Organization that still founded it and was president. And that meant when a new movie came out, everybody was sending her flowers and offering to take her to dinner and everything, because if she gave a poor review to a movie, it often meant millions of dollars for them and lost sales. And so it was a very feared and powerful position. And they all knew who Mom was. This is Mom with Roger Moore, one of the James Bond characters. And Sally Fields, I think, is still on. She's still going, still acting today, as is Clint Eastwood. But these are people that she used to hang out with. She lived in Beverly Hills before she moved to New York City. But you know, in spite of all that, so many of these people that we knew growing up were not happy. Matter of fact, you've heard the stories. I'm probably not telling you anything new. An awful lot of the people that are in show business, they drink, they use drugs, they're all mixed up morally, and some of them have money, they've got looks, and they kill themselves either deliberately or unintentionally through drugs or alcohol, and their lives are just out of control. The only way to really enjoy your life is to give it away. Jesus said, if you give me your life, I'll give it back to you. He said, he that seeks to save his life will lose it. He that loses his life for my sake, Christ said, will find it. And the theme of the world is get it all for yourself. Get as much money, get as much glory, get as much fame, make a name for yourself. You'll lose everything if you live that way. The only way to really have happiness is to lay your life down, take up your cross, then you find joy. Jesus said it's more blessed to give than receive. Isn't that right? Well, I already mentioned that Mom went back and forth between California and New York City. I was born in Burbank, California. That's where Dad had his aircraft business. And they divorced when I was 3. Like I said, their relationship was very tempestuous. So Mom moved to New York City. My brother and I moved there to join her. We lived right in Manhattan, 81st Street on the west side and 51st Street on the east side. And Mom was so busy that we often roamed the streets by ourselves. I mean, I remember being 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, just going up to 42nd Street by myself and playing. They used to have these penny arcades back then where you could play. Mom was so busy, single mother, trying to develop her career and working very hard, that I began to have problems in school. I went to 14 different schools growing up. But in spite of all that was going on, I was always wondering, what is the purpose of life? And I remember that I thought, look, money doesn't make you happy. Fame doesn't make you happy. I'd see all the people running around in New York City. They all looked unhappy. I thought, we just die and turn back into fertilizer. What's the purpose? Why not get it over with? Why not kill yourself and save yourself all the grief that people go through? And so I thought about suicide quite a bit, even as a youngster. Finally, I started thinking, look, instead of doing something boring like just killing yourself, why don't you die with some excitement? And so I thought, I'm going to do as many exciting things as I can before I die. And so my whole philosophy changed. I just thought, I'm going to see how close to the edge I can get. And I started being as crazy as I could be. I was just trying to find some purpose. I was about as mixed up as any kid could be back during this time. And the values I was getting from Hollywood and what I was seeing at home were not helping. Well, the first time I ran away from home, I was 13. And I was in and out of jail, and I'm condensing a lot of things. Got into a lot of trouble, drinking and drugs. Last time I left home, I was 15, and I moved up to Boston, got involved with all the wrong people, using drugs and drinking and alcohol and stealing. I was now stealing cars. I mean, I'd steal a car, and we'd pull up to a policeman and ask for directions, just because we thought it might be fun to get into a high-speed chase. And we were just living really crazy back then. And I had a part-time job while I was in Boston. I'm only 16 years old now, as a security guard, if you can believe that. Here I am breaking into homes, and on the side, I've got a driver's license that says I'm 18, and I'm walking around feeling like a big shot in Boston and breaking into homes and stealing. And I met a friend who was very religious, and he was a security guard, and he found out that I was stealing. His name was Jerry. I said, oh, Jerry, you going to turn me in? I never stole from the places I was guarding because they paid me and trusted me. I had some ethics. Well, this friend told me, everything you do, God sees. And he said, your karma is going to get you. He was into these Eastern religions. And I said, there's no God. I said, I stole that TV and I got rid of it and nothing happened to me and nothing's going to happen. He said, you'll see. And not too long after he told me that, I woke up in my apartment in Boston, and my door was open, and I looked and my television was gone. And my radio. And I was mad. I called the police right away. I wanted to find out And I started watching, and everything I did seemed to backfire. I'd break into someone's house, and I'd steal something, and I'd bring it back, and my friends were all thieves. They'd steal it from me. Everything I do was happening back to me. And I said, there must be a God. I could tell you 100 stories like that. The Lord was letting me know that he was there. So I began to surf around the TV channels Sunday to find out what Christianity had to offer, and I'd hear all these televangelists begging for money and going through these what looked like phony healing services to me. And you know, my mother was in show business. She was an actress. And so it was a little easier for me maybe to spot when someone was acting, and some of this stuff seemed a little disingenuous. So I just kept searching. And then I began to get involved in some of the Eastern religions, and I just took off and got involved in everything. I mean, I got involved in Buddhism, tried to learn what I could, and I read about the Buddha and Siddhartha, got involved a little bit in transcendental meditation and Hinduism, got involved in yoga, and I could still do some of those yoga exercises, trying to find out what the truth was. I already had some Jewish roots, so I tossed in a little bit of Judaism. I sort of made a potluck, invented my own religion, because I figured, you know, there's probably some good in all of them, and I'm going to just take the good from all of them and make my own. But my brain was not a very good guide of what truth was. And I went to Catholic school, so I sprinkled in a little Catholicism into it, and trying to figure out what is truth. And I was very spiritual. I would be in a bar talking about God all night long, or be high with my friends talking about God. And, you know, looking back now, it's sort of absurd to think about it. During this time, while I was living in Boston, my dad stopped in Boston. He was on a business trip. And he came, and I took him to lunch, and he said, Doug, you're wasting your life. He said, your brother's sick. He said, I've got this business. I'm successful. He said, you're healthy. And he said, you're throwing your life away. You've got to get an education. Please go back to school. He said, look, let me tell you what I found. He said, you're just living like this in Boston. It's a mess. He said, I found a school. And he said, this school is on a boat. There's girls on the boat. He said, you get to sail around the world. You go water skiing and scuba diving. And he said, you won't have to work yourself to death like you're doing right now. He said, I'll pay for it. Very expensive school. And he was pleading with me. And you know, I just couldn't tell him no. He then put me on a plane with him to Milan, Italy. Flew me to Italy, took me to this boat, handed me over to the captain. The school year had already started. It was partway through the year already. And after he left, I found out I'd been tricked. This school, and it had a lot of what he had advertised, but it was a school for the children of very wealthy politicians and people in North America whose kids maybe were getting mixed up in drugs or some kind of cult, to try and help isolate them from these bad influences, and to also teach them and to straighten them out, set them on the right track. And when I found out that I'd been tricked like this, they take away your passport. And if you get arrested in Turkey or Italy, and there's nothing anybody can do. So they put the fear in us. I couldn't run away. And so I was so mad. I wouldn't go to class. All the other students had to like wash the dishes and do the deck and stand watch and all these chores. And I said, I'm not doing anything. So one day we're in northern Africa, and the captain of the boat, who's also the principal, he comes to me and said, Doug, what do I need to do to get you to cooperate, to work with the program? Is there anything I can do? I said, yes. He said, let me go home for Christmas break, and I'll be a model student. Now, only good students got to go home for Christmas break, because this school was it's like a prison. He went right from that. He said, do we have a deal? I said, you got a deal. He went and he called my father, woke him up because of the time difference. Said, Mr. Batchelor, sorry to disturb you. He said, we just wanted to let you know Doug has shown remarkable progress, and we think he's going to be able to go home for Christmas. They wanted to get rid of me. And so, my dad was so happy to hear that, you know. So for 2 more weeks, I was good until Christmas break came around. Finally, we made it to Spain, and they put me on an airplane. First thing I did was I ordered a pack of cigarettes and a beer. Back then, you could do that. And the student said, oh, you're in trouble. I said, no, I'm not. I said, you're never going to see me again. And they never have. As soon as I got back to Florida, as soon as I got back, he was in a good mood because he had heard I was doing very well. He took the whole family snow skiing in Canada. Then after the winter trip, when it got time to go back to the school, I sold my brother everything I had, which wasn't much, got some money, and I left Florida. And I took off took a bus part of the way. I got stuck in, where was I? I was in Roanoke, Virginia. I had been drinking and playing pool, and I lost all my money. Very religious. Got stuck in Oklahoma, and I stood on one of the main arteries that crosses North America. It's called Interstate 40, and you all know what hitchhiking is. You stand out there on the road, and you go like this, and you basically beg for a ride. And I stood there for hours. Now, I'm wearing Florida clothing, and it's wintertime. And it's very cold. And it's freezing weather, and I'm just shaking violently. I'm 16 years old. I'm sick from drinking. I've got no money left. All alone on this highway, and I stood there for hours. And you get so desperate at times, I just about got on my knees. I'd go like this. I'd beg when people went by for a ride. And finally, I prayed. And I asked the Lord for four things. I didn't even know how to pray. I knew a couple of memorized Jewish prayers, and I knew the Lord's Prayer and Hail Mary, but I didn't really know how to pray on my own. And I didn't really feel right approaching God, because I said, Lord, first thing is, I know that I've done a lot of bad things, but I need your help. And I'm not understating it. I was a rotten kid, selfish. I didn't think anyone cared about me. So I didn't care about anyone else. So I prayed. I said, Lord, please help me. I need some money. I was broke. I said, need some food. I'm hungry. And I'm too proud, too stubborn to ask my dad for anything now. I didn't want to go back to that school. And I prayed that God would give me a ride to where I was going. And the fourth thing I prayed for was a ride with someone normal. Because when you're out there on the road hitchhiking, I got picked up by some real zingers. When you hitchhike, they've got a saying, only crazy people and Christians will pick you up. So I prayed. I said, Lord, please give me a ride with someone normal. I'd been standing there for 8 hours. The next vehicle to go by stopped. It was a white van. The man picked me up. He took me 2,000 miles to the door of where I was going in California. He fed me all the way out. I didn't ask him to. He gave me $40 when he dropped me off that I didn't ask for. I also did not ask him to preach to me all the way from Oklahoma to Palm Springs, California. He was a born-again Christian, and he thought I should be one too. And so he was just preaching away and telling me about the Lord. But I thought the Bible was a fairy tale. My mother used to say, that's a collection of fables. So now I was going to find God through nature. So I moved up into the mountains outside of Palm Springs, California. This is actually a picture my brother took when he came to visit me one time. Way back up in these desert mountains, there was a cave. I had found it when I was hitchhiking around when I was 15, when I was roaming around the country with a friend. But the miracle is that when I moved up into the cave, there was a Bible in the cave. And when I first saw it up there, I thought, oh, look at that. Someone left a Bible. This is not the Bible. I thought, that's interesting. About 6 months after living there, I kept running into these half hippie, half Christians in Palm Springs. We called them Jesus freaks back then. And they'd come up to you and say, do you know the Lord? Have you been washed in the blood? And I'm going, I don't know what in the world these guys are talking about. So I thought, I better read the Bible so I can argue with them, because I felt ignorant. I'd gotten into all these other religions, and I read widely on all the different Eastern religions, but I'd never read the Bible. I thought I knew about it, but I didn't. And so I went back up to the cave, and I started reading Genesis and Exodus, and I got a little bogged down when I got to Numbers. And I talked to a Christian. They said, well, you ought to go to the New Testament. And he helped me locate that. And then I read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And after reading through the Gospels, and I went to the encyclopedia, and I said, did Jesus really live? I thought he was a myth. All of them say, oh, he's a real figure of history. History's dated from his birth. And I was really struggling because I thought I've only got a couple of choices here. And so as I was going along, I finally said, I've got to make a decision. Either Jesus was crazy, or he was a liar, or he's telling the truth. You've only got those three options. I said, well, he can't be crazy, because as I'm reading through the Bible, the greatest wisdom of the ages was in the teachings of Christ. And he can't be a liar, because he had opportunity to tell the truth and save himself if he wanted to lie, but he treasured the truth so much that he was willing to die rather than to speak a falsehood. And just, as you read the teachings of Jesus, it just resonates with everybody. He's telling the truth. So my only option was that he was the Son of God. And then I really had a struggle. I thought, what do I do with this? I read where Pilate said, what will I do with Jesus? And I really heard the Lord asking me that. What am I going to do with Jesus? It's kind of a struggle for me because with my Jewish background, we thought Christians, they're always persecuting the Jews. And you're sort of disowned from your Jewish family if you accept Christ because it's almost like a betrayal. But I said, this is the truth. He was the Messiah. And so I got on my knees up there in the cave. And I said, Lord, I've done everything. I've tried everything. I said, my life's a big zero. And I'll tell you, friends, I'm not exaggerating. You think about it for a minute. You don't get much lower than I was. I'm living like a hermit up in the mountains. I'd go days without seeing anybody. I wanted to get as far away from people as I could because I just couldn't get along with people. So the only alternative I was left with is I got on my knees and said, Lord, will you come into my heart? Will you change me? Will you give me some purpose for living? And right after I prayed, I know the Lord accepted me. And I felt so excited. I just knew that I had peace, and all of a sudden my life just completely began to turn around. And I saw so many miracles, friends. I'd be panhandling on the street, and I'd say, Lord, I have nothing to eat. You said that if we pray, that you'll give us something to eat. And Lord, it'd be nice while I'm asking if we could get $4 so that we could maybe go to a restaurant. A lady walks up, hands us $4, and walks away. Catch this. I'm up in the cave, and I say, Lord, this is such good news. I want to tell the world. I can't believe you're real and people don't know. And I said, how can I tell everybody? I'm a hermit. I live in a cave. But Lord, if you give me a chance, I'll tell people what you've done for me. So I go to town, and I call my mom, who lives in Beverly Hills. I used to call her every now and then, collect, because I didn't have a phone. And she says, Doug, are you going to be up at your cave for the next couple weeks? I said, yeah, where am I going to go? She said, I've got a producer from NBC that wants to fly up to your cave and do an interview. I said, what? She said, yeah, I was having lunch with Tom Applegate, and I told him that my son's dad's a millionaire and he's living in a cave. He said, oh, that'd be a great human interest story. So I meet my mom at the airport. They climb in a helicopter, fly up there. This is the news crew in my cave. They videotape for NBC this human interest story, and they ask you, so why are you living up here? And all of a sudden, I've got this worldwide opportunity to share my testimony right after I pray. And it was on TV 3 times that day. I had to go back down to town and find a hotel lobby to watch it because I didn't have a TV. And I know it was on 3 times that day because one of my friends in jail said, Doug, I saw you on TV 3 times today. And so God is real. He'll give you these opportunities. And since then I said, Lord, I want to serve you. And I don't know how that's going to happen because I've dropped out of high school and my life's a big zero. And he just began to work a series of miracles, and they're in the book, and maybe another day I'll say more about it. I've hiked up to the cave several times since then. This is our family going up there in, 1999 or sometime around there. This is a picture of, the only picture I've really got. Can you tell I'm the black sheep of the family? My brother's wedding, I didn't even have a suit, so I fly out looking like a caveman, and they just kind of pinned some clothes on me. That's my dad and my mom. They just had to grit their teeth to get together for a picture. They've all subsequently passed away. And people have thought I was crazy because back when my dad passed away, they said, Doug, you're his only surviving blood son. You can go back and get an attorney, and you could take over the foundation, and you could have all this money, and think of what you could do then. And I saw that it was a big trap. I thought about it, but then I realized God's called me to preach the gospel. I don't want to spend the best years of my life in court, distracted from preaching the gospel. And what profit is it if you gain the whole world and lose your soul? So I basically just walked away and kept on preaching. I know some of you might think that's crazy, but I know that life. I came from that life, and they're all miserable, and they're all fighting and clawing and miserable for money or for fame or for fortune. If you want happiness, it comes from Jesus. And you can have that tonight before you leave by asking. You can do the same thing I did up in the cave. You can just Take the Word of God, believe its promises, and He'll give you a new heart. He'll forgive your sins, and He'll give you a purpose for living. Would you like to have that gift?
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with this week's special offer.
First lie that the devil told in the Garden of Eden. He said to Eve, "You shall not surely die." A lot of the Christian world teaches today that when you die, you go right to heaven or hell, before the judgment, before the resurrection. Have you heard that? Once a person dies, they don't come back to haunt anybody. They don't know anything. They have nothing to do at all with anything that's going on in this world.
Every day, people spend about 7 hours and 45 minutes sleeping, 17 seconds brushing their teeth, 1 hour and 15 minutes eating, 4 hours and 50 minutes watching TV, and 33 minutes on the phone. With only 24 hours in the day, where does God fit in? Moving Mountains, a new daily devotional. It's about understanding God and building your faith. With 366 short stories to inspire and encourage, your day will never be the same. afbookstore.com. Life-changing Christian resources.
If you've missed any of our Amazing Facts programs, visit our website at amazingfacts.org. There you'll find an archive of all our television and radio programs, including Amazing Facts Presents. One location, so many possibilities. amazingfacts.org.
In 6 days, God created the heavens and the earth. For thousands of years, man has worshiped God on the 7th day of the week. Now, each week, millions of people worship on the first day. What happened? Why did God create a day of rest? Does it really matter what day we worship? Who is behind this great shift? Discover the truth behind God's law and how it was changed. Visit SabbathTruth.com.
The story of how God changed the life of Doug Batchelor is chronicled in his book, The Richest Caveman. Many of you have had a similar journey, running away from God, saying there is no God, to having an on-again, off-again relationship with Him. You are not alone in this experience. Many of us struggle on our own to make changes in our life. The important thing to remember is that it is God's power that changes us. We are offering this biography, The Richest Caveman, at an affordable price. Just call the number on your screen and ask for offer number 213, or you can visit our website at amazingfacts.org to get your copy of this must-have book today. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Amazing Facts Presents. See you next time.